First of all, welcome everyone to our LGBTQ Allyship webinar. Today we come together to explore the concept of allyship and its significance in supporting the LGBTQ community. So the idea of this webinar is to really foster a more inclusive and accepting society, where every individual is respected and celebrated for who we are. So we have an amazing panel of guests today. We're going to speak to everyone regarding their allyship journey. But I'll pass it on to, before I pass it on, a brief introduction of myself. I'm Raymond. I'm the co-founder of Shanghai Pride. So we have been up and running Shanghai Pride for more than a decade. We're currently on a low operation status, but we are trying to start again some online events and some events that could engage the community and allies. So without further ado, I'll pass the time to our moderator for today's webinar. Ivy, to you.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you for the introduction. And hi, everyone. My name is Ivy. My pronoun is she and her. I'm the co-founder of Diversity and Inclusion. I was part of the organizing executive senior leader team of Shanghai Pride as well, with Raymond here in the panel. So a brief introduction. I was born and bred in Hong Kong, and I have around 8 years experience working with companies, especially in Asia, promoting general diversity and inclusion, and also specifically LGBT inclusion in Asian context. So today we have a very exciting lineup of today's panel. We have first Catherine, who is the global people partner from the We Travel company, and then we have Priya, the Trade Compliance Supervisor of APAC Honeywell Technology Solution Labs from India. And then last but not least, we have a male ally, Sebastian, the VP and Head of Mission Control Center from EMEA and from SAP. So thank you so much for your support and your time in spending the time with us in talking about what is allyship. So why just we start with Catherine? I know that Catherine, you as a super ally, you have done a lot of homework and research on what allyship is, and can you just start sharing with us what is it about, Catherine?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Ivy. So yeah, allyship can mean many things in many different communities. In this specific instance, it means someone who identifies as straight and cisgender, who supports the LGBTQ+ community. So this can obviously happen in different ways, and our journeys can look different from person to person. But we do separate between some different types of actions. I would say usually starts on an individual level when you become more curious about a topic and you educate yourself, you learn about something new. And then maybe you start taking it more to an interpersonal level. When you meet new people, you learn things from other people, you hear their stories, and maybe you start feeling some more passion, you start speaking more up. So this is what we call the interpersonal level of allyship. And then we also have the third level that we actually will talk about in this webinar because it's quite interesting, and we have some really experienced panelists here, and that is the structural level. So this is when you bring your passion of your allyship into, for example, your work, and into every single day you try to make some changes. It can be small things, of course, but any small change can lead to a bigger change and also impact how other people might think. So, for example, in my own case, I started, I would say, being a bit of an individual ally in the sense that I studied international politics in my bachelor. back in my home country. I'm from Denmark. And here I just started learning more about human rights and conditions around the world. And I started educating myself and also talking to others about it. And I wrote a thesis, actually. And this is something I sometimes forget, but I did write a discourse analysis about Putin's anti-homosexual propaganda law back in my bachelor. So it actually already started back then that I became more curious to learning more. And then I would say when I started living abroad, I did my master's in Australia, and I started my career in China in HR. But when I started meeting people from other countries and making friends with them, learning about their backgrounds, I just started realizing my own privilege. And so, for example, when I was in Australia, they had the voting for the marriage equality law back in, I think it was 2016. So I went to protest with my friends, obviously to vote yes. And I was just surprised that I was living in this country, Australia. I considered it a very developed nation, and they had this voting even. It wasn't just a law that just passed. You had to vote for it back in 2016. And yeah, so I started becoming more active. And also when I moved to China, my first flatmate and my best friend, he's from China, and he came out to me after a year of living together. So I started realizing his struggles, which motivated me to do more. And then I would say the structural level came in when I learned about Shanghai Pride, and I started volunteering there. I learned about it through the Danish consulate, which did a lot of work with Shanghai Pride back then. And I started to co-manage the Pride Talk, which we do annually. And I also started learning more about DEI and started applying these inclusion practices and DEI policies into my job as a HR business partner. So yeah, this is like an example of my journey personally and the allyship journey in general.
Thank you, Catherine. It's a very comprehensive sort of journey, and I really admire that, you know, even in university you get the bravery and the courage to write such a controversial topic as part of your dissertation. How about you, Sebastian? On the individual level, what was your allyship journey? Can you share more about with us?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me here. I think for me it's a journey of you know, trying to understand better what are the challenges that we are facing in this work and in companies like mine, with inclusion and why people do not feel welcome, right, in such and such environment. And actually for me, it started with an initiative that we took back in 2013 and in SAP, which was called the Autism at Work program, which essentially was trying at the time to include more and more differently able people in our company, mainly for their skills. Because we understood that they have very interesting skills for ourselves, right? For our business. And starting from there, you as an individual start to get involved, and you start from a fairly narrow field and start seeing different issues with diversity and inclusion, right? And this along the way led me to meet Charlene back in Shanghai. At the time, around the Businesswoman Network that we were actually promoting. So for me, it started with one topic, then increased to one other, Businesswoman Network and gender diversity and gender inclusion, parity and equity in the company. And through my relation with Charlene, I got invited into different events. And this is where I got in contact with D&I with LGBTQ, let's say, spectrum or area. And for me, it has been another discovery, right? Because as an ally, the first thing you have to understand is that you don't know and that you don't know what you don't know, right? And you assume a lot of different things, and you say, yeah, this is not really a problem in my company. This is not really, you know what I mean, right? And along this journey, for me, it has been a constant realization of the challenge that people that are not in the mainstream or that are not the majority are facing on one side, and also of the blind spots and biases that one can have. That obviously, as a blind spot, you do not realize it, right? And for me, being an ally is understanding that you don't know everything, understanding your own bias, fighting sometimes against those bias, and for me, it's been also a journey of including more topic in my inclusiveness, if you wish, right? Starting again from differently able people to culture, to gender, to sexual orientation, political beliefs, and to become, in my opinion, as much as possible, complete as an ally, right?
Right. Thank you, Sebastian. I really like what you say about, you don't know what you don't know, because there are actually a lot of people who do not know, but then they don't really care about what they don't know. They just go on with life. And I think to be an ally is really important to have this realization, because I think this realization makes you sort of motivate you and push you to really start to learn, about what you don't know about different communities in the marginalized group. So I want to also hear more from you, Priya, about your own individual personal journey, how you started and why you started this journey.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here. It's I do want to use the term pride here, because I'm really proud of my presence here among all of you. And it means a lot to be recognized as an ally, let alone a super ally. So thank you so much. I definitely agree with what Sebastian said about not knowing and accepting that you don't know, because that honestly is my journey into allyship. In 2021, we had the first Pride in Honeywell in the company. So there were a couple of events, a couple of speakers, external speakers, and a lot of educative sessions in the company itself. And I just landed on those meeting links by chance. So I would just say that it was like a cosmic intervention, that the universe really needed my support to bring this through into Honeywell. Very honestly, I had no idea what any of this was. I had no clue that there was something called as LGBTQAI. I did have friends who were lesbians. I did have colleagues in other companies who identified as gay but never came out. But I never knew that there was a support system, or there was a network that connected all of these people, and we could do so much for each other. Allyship was still a very, very far away topic at that point. So for me, the first thing was to educate myself, to understand what is this and where are these people coming from, what is the purpose of this, and what can I do. So it took a year for me to learn about Pride and all of the other activities that was happening. So I stayed throughout all of the webinars, through all of the events that my company was putting through at a global level. And I had one really, really fierce and passionate member in the community at Honeywell, who is based out of UK. And this person was very passionate about India in general. And he is an openly gay person, and he had identified with his community in the UK, but I had no idea. And this person invited Prince Manvendra from India to talk about what is the situation in India. And that was my first exposure. And I was very, very surprised because India is culturally rich. We are very, very diverse. We've read about a lot of transgender and different sexualities. We are home to the Kama Sutra, which is inclusive of everything, right? So I was very surprised that we do not have a network that supports people who identify with this community. And Prince Manurendra's talk was very, very insightful. So as and when I was learning about LGBTQ community and interacting with global team members, we just had an idea that India has a very, very rich history with all of this, and we should definitely tap into this. And Honeywell in India has a presence of 13,000 more employees. So I thought it would really be helpful if we expand this education and the knowledge, and also provide a platform here so that all of the people who come to work can feel that they can come and be their true selves. And that's where it all started. And that's where my allyship journey started, from knowing absolutely nothing to within the completion of Pride Month and all the activities that I participated in, to be so driven that, oh my God, this is such a huge thing and it's such an important thing. And as somebody with privilege, as a straight person who's very vocal, I'm a very I'm a person who likes to stand up for what is right. And I definitely felt that this discrimination is not something that I would support, even if I don't identify. And that's when I knew that as an ally, I can do so much. And this drove us to starting the first ever India chapter in Honeywell. And we launched the chapter in 2022 June. And this year we've completed our first anniversary, and we have about 200 plus members. Not all members are out, but as we all know, it starts off with allies, and we do want to create that strong allyship base so that whoever wants to come out can feel secure, and they can rely on us, for whatever they need. So this is my short story of how not knowing anything to be the chapter co-chair in Honeywell India.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you so much. I want to continue with what you said just now about, at the end, you mentioned you will launch a network in your company, right? Like, can you tell us more about, how you did that? Do you face any resistance or you receive any support internally to create an ERG within Honeywell?
Yeah. So the global Honeywell had already launched a couple of chapters in different states in the US, a couple of places in the Pacific and in the UK. So we did have guidance as to what are the requirements that you need to start a chapter, what kind of approvals you need to get it going. The only hindrance that I would say was from the legal perspective, because here, we did have a law in India which criminalized homosexuality, but it was decriminalized. So that was a good move, and we were able to bank on that. The lifting of Section 377, which was really helpful for us. And then that helped us push forward with all the legal barriers that we had. So it was not really difficult. It was definitely, there was no resistance as such, but I would like to replace the word resistance with being hesitant. It is a new topic. It is a lot goes against the taboo of our culture and the mindset here. So it's a bit of a cultural shock. Although we do have a rich history, it just takes time because we have multi-generational people in Honeywell. So while it might be easier to approach, attract, and include the younger generation, it's a little bit of a challenge to change the mindset of the older generation. But I do have to say that in 1 year, from having absolutely no exposure into this, and to grow 100% in 1 year from 100 members to 200 members in just a year's time is phenomenal. Also, it shows how willing and how open employees at Honeywell are in welcoming a new subject. Even though they might not be able to actively participate in things, at least they're open to the idea of knowledge, idea of learning what it is, and trying to understand what can I do and how can I show my support. So definitely the ERG, starting of the ERG was a little difficult because we were hesitant about how the reaction was going to be. But to our surprise, it has been very, very welcoming. And we are so proud that we made the move to bring in such a big introduction to India. And we have the largest ally base in all of Honeywell globally.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's very, very impressive. And I can see that because I think thanks to the legal change and also your, unwavering support, allyship, that make, everything happen so fast within just 1 year in India. And I think, on the other hand, I just want to switch to, for example, China, right? There is not so much legal development around LGBT inclusion in China. But I know that, Sebastian, you have been doing quite a lot internally as SNSP or externally in supporting LGBT inclusion. Can you share some of the activities SAP do or you yourself outside or SAP as well?
I think speaking about China, we have a sort of a gray zone. While from a legal perspective, and since 1997 and then 2001, we had laws that were more accepting, let's say, of LGBTQ community in general. The corporate environment is still very difficult because of those gray zones, right? Where let's say leaders, CEOs are rather, managing directors are rather hesitant, as mentioned by Priya, to take initiatives, right? Because they are worrisome of frustrating their relation with eventually the governments and local authorities, right? Nevertheless, it is still possible to do a lot of things in China, and sometimes even more than what we would do in some European countries, right? In our experience in SAP, we started with what we call baby steps. First of all was to create an ERG, right? In like many other companies do in many different countries, focusing essentially on allies, right? People that are interested in having a conversation about LGBTQ and inclusion, right? And it started as a very small group. And again, particularly in China, you have to accept that you are from a cultural perspective, coming from a long way back. And you have to start small, right? Also referring to Shanghai Pride, when it started very small. And then became a very large event encompassing a lot of different people, right? So we did exactly the same at SAP. We started with an ERG group, very small, limited number of people. Also, our role strategically was to influence our leaders, to give them the big pictures of why we should do that, right? And why not investing in an ERG group. After that, we started with simple educations session, knowledge transfer about the LGBTQ community, about Pride at SAP, which was already very developed in countries like Germany, like the US, and so on, and trying to bring a little bit of our local flavor, right? Obviously, not obviously, but what happened often in China is diversity and inclusion initiatives are driven by Lawais, foreigners, and one of our objectives was also to move from a foreigner-driven, as it was my case, initiative to become much more local, right? Because we also have to understand that while SAP is a bigger company, 100,000 people, we have a global Pride at SAP. Inclusiveness initiatives have to be local.
Yeah.
Because of the regulatory environment and because of the culture. You're not going to do a pride event in China as you would do in Germany, right? Or as you would do in Sweden or in the Netherlands or in South America. It's a completely different cultural landscape. So we started to bring structure. Then, as a company, once we had a certain number, what we started to do is not only communicating internally, but also associating ourselves with partners like Shanghai Pride, like DNIC, where we found for ourselves to be an inclusive company as an attractive point to be able to recruit and attract talent, right? So we also associated ourselves externally and started to communicate externally with partners and with different events, right? The goal of all of this is, on one side, to continue to promote our company as an inclusive company, but also to start also creating this more comfortable environment in our company where, yeah, it's not only for allies, Then when we started to communicate externally, we started also to share with our employees this certainty that SAP is an inclusive company, and that we meant what we mean, really. I don't know how to say that exactly, but that it is visible externally. So starting from this point, we started to have people who we knew, some others who we didn't know, who came out openly as gay, as lesbian, and start to feel compelled because we created this comfortable environment to participate and to participate openly, right? And I think this is particularly in China. My experience has been, it's a long process. You are sometimes frustrated because you see how well it's going in the US, how well it's going, for example, in India as well, where we have a very big pride community. And sometimes China is frustrating because things takes time, right? But over time, you slowly but surely can get to extraordinary results, have a very vivid community, and organized event, not only externally, but also not only internally, but externally, participate in those events, organize them, host them, and then it becomes really interesting.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Sebastian. I really like your point saying that, you really need to have a local people to support this event. And I've been working with Sebastian and SAP for the last at least 5 years, and I've witnessed this change and this success as well. At the beginning, it's just Sebastian who are the executive sponsor behind the LGBT ERG and SAP, and I can see that it evolved by changing the ERG leader every 1 or 2 years to another person who is from Hong Kong, and then now I know that there's another leader who is who is from mainland China who is leading the ERG. So I can see that it's evolving.
And maybe if I may add to the role of ally, for me it's important to understand that the ally is a secondary role, right? So you eventually take the first role at the beginning when you start creating, developing, and you use your platform, your influence, your position in the company to bring the topic forward, to create this comfortable environment. But my goal as an ally was always to not sort of disappear, but to come in the background so that people in the community, local people, start to step up and take the void that you're leaving as an ally to lead themselves, right? Because at the end of the day, that's the goal. That for a community, it has to be driven by the local people and by the people of that community, not only by allies. Allies are there to help, to promote, to create, to support, right? But we are not, and this is very important as an ally, you are not the star of the show, if you wish, right? You are a secondary role.
Yeah, I think this case important, Sebastian. It reminds me of a quote saying that, to be a leader is to influence other people to follow and to lead, the advocacy or the campaign. So I think that's really a case important. So I think I would continue to, for the next kind of topic is about success. So I will open this question to all. What kind of activities or campaign do you see as more successful, or you have the most positive results you have from? Probably we can start with Catherine.
Yeah, sure. So, so 1 year ago, I moved from China to Netherlands to work for We Travel, and of course, I would say I've had a lot more successes in creating events in my company here than in China. It was quite harder there and a bit slower, like Sebastian also said. So, and another item that was really good for me as a really, promoting ally was that one of my co-founders, he is gay. So that definitely helped me quite a lot to just get support to organize some events and make more DEI policies and trainings and stuff like that. But I would say I had a really successful Pride Month in June. We have a very global and multicultural company. So one of my concerns was definitely, we have people in all kinds of countries, mostly in Europe, US, Latin America, Africa, and Middle East. Definitely there were some, thoughts about that. How do we do that? How do we include everyone's thoughts and backgrounds and cultural differences? But we did have some really great events, and Ivy, you were obviously part of it a bit too. So we had the Pride trivia, and that was really fun. It was just really good to have some more social gatherings and an excuse for people to compete and use their knowledge, but also they would be able to win a prize, which was really, really great that our company allowed that. But then we also had the learning session with Ivy about Pride, and we talked a bit about some different topics like pronouns in the workplace, because in my company, there are some people that are very woke about this. They use pronouns already in their titles externally and so on internally. But then, of course, there's people that are also like, what does it even mean? Like they have no idea. So yeah, just, creating that inclusive learning so that everyone understands maybe the most basic, what does LGBTQI plus stand for, and what does it mean to be an ally? But then at the same time, also going deeper into, well, if you use your pronouns, what can happen with client relations and so on. So yeah, really just trying to include all the different people that we have in the company. And it was just really nice to be a part of, because I also felt a bit the struggle sometimes, like being an ally, for example, back in Shanghai, versus here, it felt very easy, to be honest. And just most people were just into it. They were just really excited about it. Of course, some people don't care, and you don't make it mandatory. You don't need to force people. But yeah, just also accepting that some people, they just don't really care about it. Maybe they will one day, maybe they will hear a little bit, and then they will start learning more. But then one thing that I really liked after the webinar with you, Ivy, was that one of our co-founders, he, not the one who's gay, one who's straight, we have a few, he actually went directly on his LinkedIn and changed and put his pronouns and said like, hey, now I understand. Like before he was like, why should I care? I don't really understand it. But then he understood, and he was like, well, this can actually make a difference, and I can be a role model. So yeah, that was one thing that I really enjoyed.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm glad that it turned out great, and I'm glad that your co-founder really make an action, take an initiative to change something through social media. I think this is a very first step that an ally can do. So Pierre and Sebastian, do you have anything to add or share?
Yeah, I do. I actually agree with Catherine and Sebastian in his previous point of using your position to promote this, and being an ally is a secondary role, of course. here in Honeywell, we did have a session. We had multiple sessions where leaders in really high positions came out and identified as members of the community. So what happened is that it allowed people to see that irrespective of your gender identity, irrespective of your sexuality, it doesn't matter, because if you have a company which supports, accepts who you are and just the way you are, you will have opportunities to grow. So it doesn't matter who you are, as long as you're skilled, as long as you're talented, there is always going to be an opportunity for you. And if you don't have it, you can always fall back on your community members to back you up and to give you that push that you need. Maybe you have a couple of colleagues who can vouch for you, saying that no, this person is definitely talented. It doesn't matter if they are part of the community or not. So as an ally and as a leader, or in any position that you hold, you can definitely give that push to those who really deserve it. So that's one part where I agree with Sebastian, and that's the topic on that. And Catherine, you mentioned that a lot of activities like trivia, we've done that too here. You know, people are really excited to get prizes. So we launched a Did You Know series, which was the first exposure into beginning with what does LGBTQ stand for, and from as something simple as that to going into facts and going into legal aspects of it and everything. And at the end of the Did You Know series, we did have a quiz and people went home with prizes. So I think that creates a little bit of excitement that, yes, I do want to learn, I do want to participate, and you know, this is what I'm taking home today. While all that is there, I still feel as an individual, what is success is that I do not give up, right? We may have activities, we may not have activities. Some of the activities may not reach the audience. It may not reach them in the right sense. You know, we may try to, here in India, we try to have rangolis with pride theme. Rangoli is like a colorful pattern that we draw at the doorstep of all our houses. So it's a very auspicious thing. It's a very good thing. So we kind of try to mix this with cultural influences, which is why we circle back to the topic where we do need local people driving local ERGs, right? Because we do understand how small gestures can go a long way. But success is not to give up. It is staying your ground and staying focused. You have to continue doing what you're doing. Today, I might not have out members as many as I want them to, open up and be themselves, but it is the understanding that it is everybody's personal journey. Just because we have an ERG, just because there are 1,000 allies in the company as a whole, it does not mean that somebody should come out. It is, at the end of the day, it is still their personal journey. They should know when they are ready to accept that and share it with the rest of the world. But it is important that we don't just limit it to Pride Month or here in India for September, because it's significant of the decriminalization of the law. So it's not limited to a couple of months in the year. So you keep talking about it throughout the year. You keep having activities or some kind of sessions. It could be like a partner session that you have with another organization or with your medical partners who, the ones that come to talk about therapy, or like a workshop or a general awareness session. Talk about hiring, talk about how diversity, can contribute to the company's success as well. Because you look at the new generation, you look at more accepting new talent, young people with more energy and enthusiasm. And of course, I feel like they have more experience in all of this than us as allies who don't know that much. It's still a continuous learning process. And no matter how much we learn, we're still going to be someone that doesn't know what it feels like to be part of the spectrum. So success is to continue to drive this, to continue to encourage people to contribute to what you know and what you don't know, and then use that knowledge to make the community, the network, and the organization better. Whether it is an engagement activity, whether it is a policy based activity, or what can you do as a corporate community. Let's say a couple of companies come together and then you go and get something done legally, right? You fight for marriage laws. All these are not happening at just an organizational level, it's happening at a country level. So the more representation you have, the more push you have from big organizations like us, it the legal division of a country would think twice about why is this so important, and maybe we should pass this law, maybe this will help the betterment of our nation. So I think success is that, just not giving up and continuing to do what works and trying new things. Even if it doesn't work, it's okay, but you've tried, so now you have a lesson to take home. So that's my take on this.
Thank you, Brian. I think that's just such a simple word, but it's very, very powerful. Do not give up, because when I reflect back myself, even now I'm in a LGBT community, there are times where I want to give up. I just want to okay, I just don't want to do that. It's not going to work. There are a lot of fear, for me coming out, for example, family, to colleagues, etc. But I think, do not allow yourself, even your ally or your LGBT community members, allow time to have a break, to have some space to take care of yourself, for self-care, for your mental health. I think this is also very, very important. Sebastian, do you have anything to add for this? You're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, I was saying that's hard to come after that, after such a compelling argument. And from ourselves, what works is consistency, right? As an ally, as a leader, consistency, being trying to be always an ally of all topics as much as possible. I consider you're either inclusive or not. It's not you don't choose from a menu. It's for me a very simple choice. And one of the measurement that you can take actually, and that we do take in SAP, is, are our employee happy? Are our employees staying with us rather than leaving? When they are leaving, why are they leaving? So we are having multiple surveys where we are, of course, inquiring on the general health of the company, right? But also specific to diversity and inclusion, asking the entire community of stakeholders, right, that we have in our company, not only the people that are directly involved, if they feel that the company is inclusive, if their opinion are taken into account, if they feel safe to express and voice those opinions. Because at the end of the day, from a company perspective, this is what we're looking for. Having happy employee that feel comfortable at work, that are going to be able to share their opinion, their ideas, without the fear of being ostracized or anything, right? And particularly the people in the LGBTQ community have been ostracized, right? Particularly people in diversely able have been ostracized, right? So creating this, again, comfortable, fertile environment for diversity, for being yourself, is also measurable directly in our P&L, in our success with our employees, in our success with our customers, because also one of the quality that you need to have as an ally is being empathetic. And how can you better serve your customer, help your customer, than being empathetic to their problems, to their challenges, right? So it is good for the society, but it's also good for the company, and there are ways to measure it, right? And success is also measured by employee happiness, retention rate, and also measured in those more qualitative survey that we are doing. And for me, this is important, particularly when you're talking to the executives and the C-suite, that we're doing this because it's right, but because it's also very beneficial for the companies we're working with, and that for the company we're partnering with. This was also right now, SAP would partner more with companies that are inclusive than companies that are not, actually, because it aligns more to our values. So success is also a company success.
Thank you, Sebastian. I think this, especially from company perspective, is important to show the business management that it makes perfectly business sense in order to promote and continue, investing in the effort in promoting LGBT or general D&I inclusion.
And maybe to finish on that, not doing anything is doing something, actually. Not talking to those communities is telling them very clearly, you don't matter. You are not welcome here, right? So I think that from again, I'm taking this from more of an executive, from more of a manager perspective. If you don't talk, you are talking actively, actually.
Yeah, got it. Thank you so much. I want to also move on to challenges of being an ally. I think Catherine earlier mentioned that, relocating from China to now the Netherlands is just easier for you to be an ally. Can you share more about, what have you encountered as the challenges or difficulties? For example, when you were in China, what kind of challenge you faced being an ally when you stood up for the community?
Yeah, well, I guess lots of challenges back then. We talked a lot about resilience and keeping going. I think when I was in Shanghai, I discovered my passion around this, and I got involved with Shanghai Pride and so on. So I was really passionate about, oh, this is so exciting, and I was quite new to everything. So maybe I didn't go through that whole, for example, let's say if I was there for 10 years or something, how would my resilient journey been? But definitely there were some cases of actually discrimination in my previous companies. And I just really, it was really tough in the moment and also quite scary. But then I took up the network that we had, and we had several WeChat groups and so on, but we also had a larger intercompany Pride intercompany network, I remember, and got a lot of help and advices through there. So I really think living in a place like that, it's so important to have a good network, because there's maybe more support from people than from the legal side or from the companies. So yeah, that was definitely something that kept me going, was just our whole network that we had there. But in general, I would say, even just coming back to Europe, a lot of assumptions or just people not really understanding or not really caring. Of course, that's part of, creating awareness, and just, being able to explain your standpoint. But just, it can be a little bit tough sometimes, because also I think there's a lot of people that assume that I'm lesbian or bisexual, because I'm saying that I'm a proud ally, and I love I love Pride. I love celebrating Pride with my friends and the communities. But I even that was one thing that kind of shocked me, was a lot of people from the gay community actually were suggesting or trying to convince me that I'm lesbian. So a little bit funny, but also a bit like, okay, when you have your own sexuality misunderstood or misinterpreted because of your activities or your passions or something like this. So that's maybe a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, but actually I think that's just a bigger motivator to keep on going and to keep on advocating, because even within the LGBTQ community, I think there's also a lot of education that needs to happen. So that's another thing that I noticed about being an ally.
Thanks, Catherine. How about Priya? I saw that you were smiling when Catherine mentioned that she was misunderstood as a lesbian.
Yes.
Do you have
Yeah, that does happen for sure. It's a general assumption that if you're a member of the LGBTQ ERG, it definitely means that you belong on the spectrum, right? There is no way a straight person can sign up for these things. um, the other one is, well, I'm not really offended by the assumption, to be honest. I'm like, I really don't care because I'm very sure of my sexuality. So it doesn't really matter what other people think of it. But what bothers me is when people assume that it is only for people who are on the spectrum. It isn't. It's for everybody. And when we speak of allyship and we are driving allyship at a global level, it's all the more important that you show up and you stand there for everybody that needs to. You exercise your privilege that you have for all those people that need you. So that is one challenge that we do need to talk to people and make it just normalize the whole idea of allyship and what it means to be part of a community. For example, we do have a women's network, right? But we do have a lot of men on the network. On the ERG, it doesn't mean that the men are women. It simply means that the men are willing to stand up for the women and create more opportunities and fair pay and everything for them. So it's the same logic with the LGBTQ ERG as well. The other one is that appearance, right? I mean, generally girls need to have long hair and need to dress up in a certain way. I've had a boycott for the longest time. My hair is just growing out, but I've had a boycott for the longest time. And up until a couple of years ago, it didn't mean anything. But with the sudden rise in people actually learning about LGBTQ plus communities, and when I go out, let's say if I'm out at a party or I'm in a pub, I just get hit on by women because they think I'm lesbian or bisexual just because I have a boycott and I'm wearing pants and I'm not dressed up in a girly way. Um, and those assumptions also come in the office, in the workspace, because now employees are looking at, okay, this is what LGBTQ plus stands for. So maybe this person who is driving this so passionately and advocating for this is a member of the community, and she wants some kind of benefit or some kind of recognition from this, or some advantage from this, and that's why. So those kind of assumptions are a little, like Catherine mentioned, a little bit uncomfortable, but it's not that it's really a challenge and it deters us from doing what we have to do. And the other thing is just acceptance. People are very protective in general. People are defensive. So bringing this out in the open, there were some questions around, oh, now that we're talking about all of this, are you encouraging that people convert from being straight to being lesbian or gay or transgender? I mean, that is ridiculous. The point of knowledge, the point of education is for people to be self-aware, one of themselves, and to also recognize anybody in their close circle, could be family, could be friends, could be fellow employees, just to check if they're okay. Sometimes we may not be comfortable putting on a different face. If let's say, for example, if I want to identify as a man, but I'm forced to be a woman in the office, and if one of my colleague who is an ally observes something which is off and maybe approaches me and talks to me. Now, that is the reason why we are educating, right? That is the reason. Then maybe as an ally, you can guide, hey, look, there are policies we have in place, or this is a support you can use. Here's the medical facilities that you have, or this is the therapist that you can talk to, or here's a community outside of office where you can talk about what you're feeling and what kind of changes you're experiencing. that is what we're trying to build, but we're not trying to convert anybody. We're not trying to push anybody to be something that they're not. It's the other way around. We're trying to ask people to open, self-examine, look at people around you, get a pulse of what's happening around you, be accepting and be inclusive without discriminating. So I think there's just a very fine line between things could go either way. So at the end of the day, it's up to you how you put the message across, right? Sometimes not all words come across in the same way. Um, it can be misinterpreted. So be very careful. I would say that we all should be careful of the words that we choose. And if we are uncomfortable with a certain terminology, it's better to express it than to hold a grudge about it. So if people don't like being called gay or being called queer, you just walk up to them and address the issue instead of, having a fight or having that kind of tension which is unresolved. So I think that these are like a couple of points that I see as a challenge, but all of these can be overcome depending on how your outlook and how your perspective is on things.
Thanks, Priya. I think the other day is also show that being an ally is a journey, right? It's not like a one-day thing. It's not like you attend this webinar and then you're an ally. It's like a continuous consistency, and that led to the last topic that I want to talk. And I think Catherine also prepared about this, about different stages of allyship. Catherine, do you want to briefly talk about it?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Bearing in mind that we are running a bit out of time now, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. But yeah, definitely just want to say that Priya and Sebastian, I really loved all your points and took some notes myself because I learned a lot as well. So I guess we talked a bit about the journey of allyship, and then we can also look here at the stages of allyship. So maybe you can see here that it goes from I'm not really an ally to being a super ally. So just talking a little bit about this development. So basically it all starts with awareness and education, learning from others, but also adapting and changing your mindset and behaviors while you learn and while you're being more aware of the people and the surroundings. So I think that's just in general in life as well. But definitely one thing that's just really important in allyship is being kind, first of all, being friendly, including others, also those that are different from you. One kind gesture or one kind word can go a long way, even in the everyday life. And that is also to do with empathy. I think, Sebastian, you mentioned empathy. You never know what's hiding behind someone's facade. You never know what someone's struggling with. I have this meme of like this person, that is like, there's like a whole bag of things behind, but on the front, it's obviously just flowers, so to say, like it's all fine. Everyone's smiling and being polite, but you never know. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And with that also your mindset, like asking questions instead of making assumptions. Sometimes assumptions can be good and can give us some, standpoints about other people, but asking questions and being curious about others. And also don't force it. If you feel that people are uncomfortable, you don't have to know everything about them. But of course, learning to get to know people and showing your curiosity is good. And also practice active listening and empathetic listening. And at the same time, challenging your unconscious biases. So if you don't know what is active listening, maybe you can look it up afterwards. It's really great, because communication is not just about talking. I guess a lot of people know that. But then another point is, the whole LGBTQ community is so diverse and so intersectional. So intersectionality is also really important. Like someone is not just gay, someone can also be a father or Black or, you know, all these kind of layers to people. So it's a really complex and diverse community. There's always something new to learn. And also within the community, I think I mentioned that before, but there's always also a lot to learn within the community. There's a lot of things to learn about trans community, for example. And so, yeah, there's so many stories. And what I think is really great about the LGBTQ community and what's unique about it is that people have had to come out. Sometimes they have, and sometimes they have not yet. But imagining like coming out and actually you have to really know yourself and your identity. And I really think that's an extremely resilient thing for people to have to, you know, come out to your family or to your friends or whatever, and just getting to know yourself and that you are different in some level from the normal society or what society normalizes. So yeah, I really think there's so many interesting stories to learn. So I think that's like maybe I guess the first few orange, is it red, orange, and yellow? Then moving on to the purple ally, you can maybe start talking more about it and also coming out as an ally, like being proud about it, celebrate it, talk about yourself as an ally, but also just allyship in general and how important it is. Using your own privilege to speak up. We talked about privilege as well, and just also the resilience, consistency, keeping on going, standing up for others when needed, and using your own privilege to speak up on others' behalf when they are silenced or they're discriminated or they're unfairly treated. And then I guess moving on to the super ally, I think, at least to me, super ally means using your privilege and your power. So, for example, senior managers, CEOs, they can all be role models, implement radical changes in organizations that can have an effect on other people in their organization and how they see the world. And then it can go on and on and on, like a sort of like a cycle or domino effect. And I also think, like myself, I don't know if there's any HR people here today, but HR professionals can facilitate DEI trainings, inclusive leadership trainings, create inclusive policies and anti-tolerance policies towards discrimination, update handbooks, all that kind of stuff. That's actually quite easy if you're just on a like a HRBP level, like I was back in China. Basic stuff that can have a little bit of a difference in everyday life. And yeah, I guess in general, just being a role model and walk the talk, create a safe space for others, joining relevant ERGs, arranging learning clubs or sharing events, volunteering, get involved on the grassroots level. There's so many things you can do to be an outspoken and advocating ally, and therefore super ally. And for sure, allyship is just really what helps bring others and ourselves forward. I don't think it's only about others, it can also be about yourself. And you can help create the change that's needed in the world today. So it's always worth it.
Thank you, Catherine. Catherine is very detailed sharing, and thank you so much. I really like Priya in the chat box saying that, you know, everyone, no matter what your sexual orientation, gender is, can be an ally for, you know, everyone. And thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing, you know, journey. I think this is something that even I myself are still on this, you know, journey, learning about other community, for example, intersex or transgender community. I think that's it for now. Thank you so much for your contribution and support for the time on your sharing for this. I'll pass the time to Raymond to wrap up.
Sure, thank you, Ivy. That is such an amazing session. If in the audience we have questions, probably we can take one or two. Anyone? Anyone? We have questions. Then if not, then we are almost there with our timing tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our session. A lot of experiences and challenges that we can share. Thank you to all our 3 panelists. If you would like to connect with us, feel free to do so on our social media and LinkedIn. Feel free to connect among the panels as well. We would be happy if you could support our upcoming events when we announce them. So make sure that you follow us as well.